Alright, to build your mask, you're going to need your rib, you're going to need a spoon, a knife, a fork, your sponge, a small amount of water, and if you have one, a wire tool or a piece of string to cut your clay. You're also going to need to make an armature to build your mask around. And there's a couple different options on building armatures. If you have any newspapers or ads laying around, you can crumble these up. And the requirements for this mask are that your mask is 8 to 10 inches tall, so make sure you get enough here. Save at least one sheet, because I can ball these up and then hold them together with one intact sheet of paper. Okay, you could use some tape to hold that together, and then you could build your clay over this because it's rounded and you want your mask to be round curved. So you can use paper. If you get a lot of packages in the mail and you get a lot of these little blow up things, you could use these and wrap your clay around that, or you could pop them. You can also use like a hand towel, like a small towel, and if you don't want it to get all nasty with clay, grab a little garbage bag, throw the towel in the garbage bag, and then shape this to the size you need, and you can wrap your clay around that. Okay. So now I need to get some clay. And at this point, you probably have chunks of clay in your bag, kind of like I do. And so whenever you have a bunch of chunks of clay, before you use them, you need to wedge them, so to remove any air bubbles. So I'm going to wedge this, and there's the how to wedge video demo you can watch on how to do that. Okay, so I've got my wedged clay, a pretty considerable sized chunk here. And now in order to make this fit, I'm going to use the towel wrapped in a garbage bag. To make this fit, I'm going to need to take this clay and flatten it out enough to make it so it'll wrap around. There's a couple ways you can do that. If you have a rolling pin, and your parents don't mind if you use the rolling pin on clay, then you can use that. If you have like a PVC pipe in the garage, or if you can use a broom handle, unscrew it from the end of the broom, or you can do like I'm doing, and I'm just flattening it in my hand. You don't want it to be too thick, so just keep flattening it, and you notice as I'm flattening it, it's getting bigger and bigger, wider and wider. It's really thick in the middle there. And you're going to want to do this until it's wide enough to wrap over your armature. I think mine's pretty good. I got a little bit of a hole here. I'm just going to smooth that out. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap it around my armature. Okay, so now my mask, or the base of my mask, is pretty curved. See, it's wrapping around. You know, at this point, if it's looking really bumpy like mine is, you can take your rib and kind of smooth it out so you have like a nice clean slate to work with here as you start building the face. And now it's really, the sides are really uneven, so at this point I'm gonna just try and cut like a nice clean edge around the edge of my mask. Take off all that extra. it a little bit more. Remember, when you use a rib, you want to bend it so it covers more surface area. You can make it even smoother if I run a wet sponge over it.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now I need to determine which is going to be the top of the head versus the chin. You know, the top should be a little bit wider than the chin. So mine, I think this is kind of wider than the chin. And I could always kind of push this in a little bit to get more of a chin shape. Okay, now, so there's the base of my mask. Now the next thing I'm going to do is draw my facial feature guideline so that I make sure I put all the facial features in the correct place. Remember, this line here represents the center of the head. The eyes go in the middle of the head. So you can just kind of eyeball that there. No pun intended. And then so this is where the eyes go. Okay, so here's going to be my eyes. And then the nose goes in between the nose or the eye line and the bottom of the chin. So find the center there, and that's the bottom of the nose. And then the mouth goes in between the nose line and the bottom of the chin, and this represents the bottom of the mouth. Okay, so to start the eyes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my thumbs and I'm going to dig in some eye sockets. You're building the eyes from the inside out. So make nice deep eye sockets. Don't poke them all the way through. Try and make them, you know, symmetrical, even. Don't put them too close together or too far apart. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the eyeball. So I'm going to take a piece of clay, I'm going to ball it up. This might take a few tries, but try and make one ball that'll fit in an eye socket like that. Okay, so this fits. But I don't want to use this because if I put that in there, you'll see the eyes looks like it's bulging out of the head. So, to fix that problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half, try and go right down the center. And now I have two eyeballs that are the same size that when I put in those eye sockets, now they're not bulging out so much. Now the one time when you don't really necessarily need to score and slip because you're going to add eyelids and the eyelids are going to hold these in place. So to make an eyelid, take a small piece of clay, roll a little coil in your hand like this, and then flatten it out because our eyelids are flat. So you want this to be pretty flat. And I kind of arched it a little bit, so I'm making the top eyelid. So see how flat I made that? And I'm just going to slightly overlap the top of the eyeball. And you want to make sure it goes from the center of the eye on this side all the way over to the center of the eye on this side. And then I'm going to pinch that out. I'm going to make another one. Okay, I made a coil, pinching it. And I'm going to make it go from this eyelid down and around to this eyelid. Okay, and then you're going to want to score and slip these on. This could also be the mouth. No, don't use that. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little bit of water on here on my sponge. Just kind of dab a little water on there, put a little water on here, and then put it back on the eye, reposition it where you want it before you blend it in. And now I'm going to use my spoon and I'm going to blend the top eyelid up and the bottom eyelid down. I'll use my finger to kind of smooth that out. And obviously if you want the eye to be a little more closed, then you would bring the eyelids closer together. But what you don't want to do is don't blend this eyelid into the eyeball, because then you completely lose all that detail that you just made. And if you do accidentally blend a little too much in, You could always take your knife or spoon, because it's rounded, and just kind of go back in there and recreate that overlapping appearance. Okay, so that's how you make the eyes. Now what I don't recommend you do is don't then go in and carve detail. Don't carve detail into the eye. Don't go in here and then draw like the iris and the pupil, because that's all detail you're going to do with the glaze or paint, whichever it is you decide to use. Okay, next we're going to make the nose. To make the nose, you're going to take a decent sized piece of clay here and roll it into a cone shape. So to roll this into a cone, when you're making a coil, your hands are parallel. When you make a cone, you want to angle the top of your hands so you have like a V shape. So by doing that, I'm pinching it in the top of my hands, it's creating a cone shape, see? And this will be the nose. So the nose will go right about here. If you're making Pinocchio. Put the nose like this. Now this seems really large. It's a little bit bigger than I need it to be, but I want this bridge of the nose to go up between the eyes, and then it should stop at my nose line. So right now it's really long, looks like Squidward. So I'm going to cut this right at the nose line. Okay, so now it's not so big. Round that out a little bit. And I'm going to score and slip this on. A lot of times you want to start with a little bit more clay than you need, because you always have to keep in mind you're going to be blending some of this into the face. So if you start with a really small piece of clay and then you blend it into the face and there's like hardly anything left over. So I scored and slipped it. Now I'm going to take my spoon and blend this into the head so it doesn't fall off. Remember, you always want to score and slip. Okay, so you see now it's gotten a little bit smaller, and you can reshape the bridge of the nose however you want. You can kind of, maybe flatten this out a little bit and then add a little bit more detail. Okay, now the only thing he's missing now is nostrils. So to make nostrils, just like you did with the eye, make one nostril and then cut it in half so you have two identical sized nostrils. So I'm going to score and slip these on. Looks kind of funny now, but you just wait and see. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my fingers on this one, and I'm going to blend this into the nose. And as I said, I started with more than I needed, because now as I'm blending this in, I'm taking away at least a quarter of what I initially put on, so it's getting a little bit smaller. Once you get it blended in, then you can go in and kind of reshape it to the shape that you want. So like I can pull this out a little bit and use my thumbs to indent the nostrils a little, so, and then kind of pulling it up. Now if we look at the profile, the nose is looking pretty good. It's kind of flat. I mean, you could always add a little extra if you want the end of the nose to stick out a little bit more. I'll just score and slip a little. I kind of made a little ball and flattened it out. So now the nose sticks out a little bit more. And that's one thing you're going to want to do, and in the example sheet that I've attached to this assignment, there's the paper that shows a side profile, because when you're building this, you will kind of want to pay attention to the side profile of your mask. And there are certain elements that, because like right now there's no brow, there's no chin, so I'll show you how to add all those features after the mouth. So the mouth is the hardest part to do, and to make a mouth you're going to make 2 coils. One coil represents the upper lip and one coil represents the bottom lip. Bottom lip coil should be a little bit thicker than the upper lip. And as I said, you want to start with a little bit more than you actually need, because I'm going to blend a lot of this into the face. And this is longer than I need, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch these together and pull them out. And then I'm going to score and slip this on. Okay, now I'm going to use my spoon, and what I'm going to do is, if you notice, like if you felt your under your nose right here, you'll notice that from under your nose, your lip it angles up out towards your lip. Okay, so right now if I just left this, if I just scored and slipped this like this, you see how the lips are sticking out like it's kissing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend this down so that it goes like at an angle and swoops up to the bottom of the nose. So I'm going to take this. Now before I do that, I'm going to draw the shape of the lips that I want. So even though I added all this clay, I only want the lips to be about this size. And so that means I'm going to blend everything above this line into the face. And I'm kind of scooping it in, up and under the nose. And same with the bottom, so everything below this line that I added, I'm going to blend that in. And I took my thumbs and I pushed on the upper lip, because you want the lip to kind of, you see kind of from the angle here. Now it doesn't stick out as much, it still does a little bit, and I can fix that, but you want the bottom lip, or the upper lip rather, to come up to a point and then blend down into under the nose. And obviously if the mask that you're making, your design is that the mouth is open, then you would, obviously adjust the lips to make them open. Now what I want to do is I kind of blended the bottom lip into the upper lip, so what I'm going to do is take my knife and recreate that line in between the lips. So you can see how I started out with a whole bunch of clay, but now I've used a lot of that by blending it into the face. Now here's where it'd be helpful if you have a paintbrush. This is where you can work and really smooth out these areas. I can't really get my finger in here to smooth this out, or my sponge is obviously way too big. So if I take a wet, I'm just dipping this in my water. If I take this wet paintbrush and I run this in here, that'll really smooth this out. And you can use this all over the place on the face to work on your details, smoothing things out. If you don't have a paintbrush, you will get one when you pick up your glaze, because obviously you're going to need a paintbrush to apply your glaze to your projects. So we'll get you one of those if you need one. But if you have one before you pick up your glaze, then I recommend using that on this project especially, or any project that you work on from here on out where you have all this really fine detail that you can't fit your sponge into. Use a wet paintbrush. Okay, so there's my mouth. And then the couple other things that you have to add are cheekbones, a brow, and a chin. Because right now, again, looking at the profile, this mask has no chin. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. To make the brow, I'm going to take all these random pieces of clay I have and roll them. And the brow basically is just a real thick coil you're going to add across the top. You don't want to make it too big, otherwise your mask is going to look like a caveman. But score and slip. So, and even though I made this really thick, what I want to do is really blend this into the face, because the goal here is for your profile to look something like this. So when you're looking at your mask from the side, you should have, here's where the brow is, and then comes down, and here's the nose, and then upper lip arches out like this and goes in, bottom lip is curved, and then it goes into the chin like that. So here's where your eye is, there's your nose, and then here's your hair. So this is the profile you're looking for. So that's why I was saying you really want to keep looking, because if the profile of your mask, you know, if you didn't add, say, the ball on the end of the nose like I did, then the nose is going to be really flat. And if you didn't blend this in correctly, that you're going to have like fish lips, and you don't add a nose, then your person is really going to look sad. Okay, so this is, you don't want your profile to look like that, you want it to look like this. So, or close to it, similar. So now that I put this super thick coil here, now I'm going to blend this down. And I want to do like the spoon's not cutting it. I really want this to really gradually go down into the forehead. So you don't want it to go straight down. And then this part more goes straight down. Okay, so crazy there and mush the eye. Okay, so now you can see how I started with that really big piece of clay, and then now it's really, I really blended it down so that my person has a brow, and you can shape this, you know, and really reflect the expression that you want your mask to have. And if you want it to look kind of mean, you can angle that down a little bit, or okay, now for the cheekbones, again, just like with the eyes and the nose and the nostrils, make one ball, cut it in half, and I'll score and slip these here. And I'm really gonna, again, I started with a huge chunk of clay, but I'm gonna really blend a lot of this in. A little easier to use the sponge here, or the spoon rather, so I don't mush up that eye again. See, my clay I thinned it out a little too much right here, and it's really flimsy and it's cracking, and so that's just something, you know, I'm gonna have to go back in and fix later on. a lot more water on there than I thought. So he's crying. Okay, so you can see how now I've really built up the cheekbone there. And then the last thing is the chin. And so to make the chin, you're going to want to start with a decent sized ball of clay and kind of roll it out to just like a really thick, short coil. That's a little too much. Like this. So this is again pretty thick. And I'm going to attach this here so I can really build that chin out. Score and slip. And I'm going to really blend this in. Kind of swoop it up to the bottom lip. Because remember, this profile, see how it's what I just did initially, my mask was like this. And I just added this huge chunk of clay here. I'm blending it up under the lip and then kind of straight back. So now my mask has a chin. Oh, well, the amount of water on my sponge is really unpredictable. Okay, so there it is. So now if I look at the profile, he has a chin, cheekbones, a brow, and he's pretty ugly. But, you know, work on smoothing this out, and then you'll add your surrealistic element. And this kind of almost looks surreal right now because the eye's kind of creepy. But whatever it is that you decide to do for your surreal element, you know, whether that be like some sort of robotic feature or part animal or, you know, whatever you want to do. And it doesn't have to be half and half. If you want to do half and half design, you can. Again, it's up to you. As long as you have at least one surrealistic element or one human element, then you'll be fine. And that's it.